Let's get some legal clarity now with lawyer Ufeli on the news at 10. Mr. Ufeli, thanks for joining us tonight. In clear legal terms, can the House lawfully continue this impeachment process without first setting aside the court order, or would that amount to contempt of court?
Yes, it will amount to contempt of court because every order of court, however onerous, must be obeyed. Okay? Even if the order of court was reached per incurium or it was carried out in a way that is not proper, you must first of all obey that order. Okay, because any disobedience to order of court is contempt of court. I know that there are arguments here and there by this Section 188 of the 1999 Constitution and Section 272, subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution, respectively. The both sides are talking about Section 272, sub 3 talks about the fact that it is the Federal High Court that has jurisdiction to determine whether the office of a state house member, a governor, or a deputy governor has expired or there's a vacancy. It's the Federal High Court that has jurisdiction over that. I know that. But it's yet to be interpreted in the way that the court ought to do that. Then Section 188, subsection 10, talks about the fact that a court of law cannot interrupt, impeachment proceedings. That is granted. But you see, those are provisions of law. Okay? What has happened is that the state high court has issued an injunction restraining the chief judge from constituting that panel. It is the responsibility of the chief judge to make sure that he obeys that order. The impeachment proceeding cannot go further, at least within the next 7 days that the order subsists. Okay? The court is still going to ask them to go and put the adverse party on notice. That's the State House of Assembly, wherein they will file their own counter affidavit and or preliminary objection to, contend with the jurisdiction of the court on the issue under reference. But as it stands now, anyone who goes against the order of the court will be guilty of contempt of court. And a chief judge of a state is answerable to the NJC and cannot and will not move an inch in the instance under reference because there's a subsisting interlocutory order asking him to stay action until the suit is determined.
I'm wondering what you think happens. What risks does he face if he chooses otherwise?
What does he face if he chooses? He can't because he faces the NJC for disciplinary action. And he faces the same court for contempt of court. Okay, so every judicial officer, every lawyer, every judge know that the order of courts are sacred. And once they are made, they must be obeyed. Forget about what politicians do when they mess up our judicial system, okay? By employing all kinds of surreptitious, all kinds of, illegal movement. This one now, we're talking about, in this case, we're talking about the judiciary against the judiciary, the chief judge of a state against the order of a court. He can't get back to that point where he's going to make it.
You touched on this briefly earlier, Mr. Ufeli, and it's what supporters of the impeachment argue, that impeachment is a purely legislative matter, that the court should not intervene. Where does our constitutional law draw the line when is court intervention justified in an impeachment process, and when does it risk overstepping into legislative territory under Nigeria's separation of powers framework?
No, the same constitution in section 6 of the 1999 Constitution as amended has given the judiciary that power, okay, to resolve disputes among persons and authority. That's a general power, okay. So on the strength of that, it can determine that matter for now, depending on when the adverse party canvasses an argument otherwise. The fact that the law says so, it is the judiciary, the judge, that will interpret that is why Fubara went to court. Whether he went to the right court or the wrong court is not what is an issue now. What is an issue now is that there's an order, a subsisting order. And we've seen cases where people go to the wrong court when they are challenged. When they lose there, they then go to the right court. Whichever court is gone to, from the look of things, from the surface of law, okay, they ought to have approached the Federal High Court. But now a state high court is involved and an order has been made. That order, albeit it from anywhere, so long as the court of law that have a competent court of law, that order must be obeyed. The only way you can take down that order is when you have done the necessary procedure and proceedings to vacate it. As long as it subsists, anything that is done contrary to the order of that court will be null and void.
Let's talk about...
That is why, even when you are challenging a court that a court has no jurisdiction, the law says that the court must first of all assume jurisdiction to determine whether it has jurisdiction or not.
All right. We're running out of time, but let me just chip this in. And it's a question of what happens next and who blinks first, because the answers you get these days is a function of who you're talking to. The House is pushing forward. The court is issuing restraining order. How do you see all of these impact on the governance in Rivers State?
Well, where the court is, where the State House is now, they can't move any further because they have completed their own assignment at this stage. At this stage, it is the chief judge of the state that is meant to act right now. And unfortunately, or fortunately, there's an order against the chief judge not to act. He must obey it, okay? The issue now is that it is the people of Rivers State that will suffer it because since inception, I mean, Fubara have not been in a good place to govern because of the unnecessary distraction that is coming from all angles, okay? And for the State House of Assembly not to operate with a mind of its own, allowed itself to be used, you know, by the ex-governor of that state. That is the problem we're facing. And until they resolve that, just 4 of them, you know, wanted a political solution, and only today they pulled out again, okay? So there's a need for these statesmen to understand that their people require good governance and they must give it to them.
Interesting days ahead with the different interpretations and understanding of what's happening in Rivers State. Lawyer Ufeli, thank you for talking to us.
My pleasure.
Still